Hi guys, Alicia with Working Dog Radio, Torchlight Canine, and Oil Capital Canine Fund. Thank you guys for tuning in to another awesome episode. Please check us out on YouTube. It's a new format for us. We'd love to have you as a subscriber. We're going to start doing some training videos and some other cool stuff on there. So we would really appreciate your follow on there. We'd like to take a second to thank our amazing sponsors. Without them, none of this would be possible. So guys, please check out Kinetic Dog Food, 513-615-6904. They are amazing. American Aluminum Accessories. They make all things canine insert. They've got some new heat alarms. Please check them out. Give them a call at 800-277-0869. Horizon Structures, everything mild to wild in a dog kennel. They have it. They will drop it off at your door. Give them a call at 888-447-4337. If you guys haven't checked out Highland Canine Training yet, what are you waiting for? Jason and Aaron are amazing. They've got all kinds of courses, classes, and schools going on. Please check out Highland Canine Training at Tactical Police, the letter K, the number 9, training.com. Ray Allen Manufacturing, right there in Colorado. Everything is sewn there. They are amazing. They do so many collaborations with so many of the actual working canine guys in our industry, including me. Give them a shout. Check them out at rayallen.com and use the discount code WDR10RAY for 10% all things Ray Allen. Dogtra.com. If you have an e-collar, if you use an e-collar, if you have a working dog or a pet dog, check out Dogtra. They've got all of the products that you need. You can go to dogtra.com and use discount code WDR10 for 10% off a single item over $200. Enjoy the episode. We'll be back. Thanks.
All right, we are back. Working Dog Radio, broadcasting the bite. I am Ted Summers from Tulsa, Oklahoma. With me, as always, from Canton, Ohio. I guess the storm's already there. It's Eric. It's Eric Stanbro from snowy Canton.
Yep. We got hit last night. I didn't even know. I woke up. You know what happens at 4:30 in the morning? I heard the plow truck. I went, "Uh-oh, that's not good."
Oh man!
Because right by my house. So yeah, it's 4-wheel drive. It's, Ohio winter's not too bad, man. This will be for a few days. It'll be cold and then it'll go away. It's not too horrible.
Does your driveway get dicey?
Yeah. So I shoveled it this morning, but normally I have a parking area because my driveway my house sits down in from the road.
It's like a 60-degree angle down your driveway.
Yeah, I slid into the driveway with my F-150. Like the first week I had it plowed right into it, but $8,000 of damage to the garage. My wife has hit the garage because the driveway goes down real tight and makes a hard right to the parking area. And there's a moment where it's just steep enough that a heavy truck will slip. So I usually park up in this upper parking area, which I'm going to do tonight when I get home. But yeah, man, we're just rolling in pets. I've been office dude for the last couple of days. My sales manager, her son had some tonsil surgery and she's been out, so I've been running the phones. I got 2 phones sitting here and another computer and handling sales, booking dogs, doing all the office stuff. I grab a leash here and there a little bit. My employees like it. So we have a mini poodle puppy in the facility who is 6 pounds. They like to try to get pictures or videos of me walking these tiny little dogs.
Yeah, Alicia has a new Kick-A-Pet thing. It's like a 2-pound Chihuahua, and its name's Betty White. And all the staff, every time I'm carrying it around the kennel, they're like, "Come here, let me take a picture." I'm like, "Get away from me!"
Especially with a sweater on or some shit.
I bought it so I went on vacation with my girlfriend over to Arkansas last weekend, and I bought this thing it looks like a sock basically, but it's a little jacket. I've been getting the kennel ready all day, last couple of days for this storm is coming, and it's supposed to be the coldest January in a decade or something. Last year, all of our water froze for 10 days.
I remember that. Yeah.
Oh, it was brutal. I was like, I'm not doing that again. So heat tape, and I've been stuffing insulation down inside one of the walls and cut part of the floor out. And so I'm like, all right, I'm not repeating that, because I have an HRD. I have to go pick up 9 dogs from Houston and several things between now and when this thing's supposed to come in. So the last thing I want to do is have to unload a bunch of 9 angry dual-purpose green assholes. We're past 30 seconds into the kennel, and I'm not looking forward to that. So we're going to have water.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
You know, the funny thing is, this little puppy, her name is Paris. So we started playing with a little plushie toy with her. Dude, she will put that thing all the way in the back of her mouth, and you can pick her up.
Yeah.
She's a poodle. You can pick her up. She's a lot of fun, man. But yeah, we're just doing that right now. This is, well, tomorrow starts basically SWAT season here at the Funhouse. Every weekend there's some sort of tactical stuff going on during the week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, almost every week there's some SWAT teams here. So because there's bathrooms and it's heated, and they can do stuff here in the dark. It's dark, there's no windows, so they can be wearing nods at 9 o'clock in the morning. So it's pretty good. So let's move on to our guest.
Yeah.
So if you listen to our episode, I say so many times, dude. If you listen to our episode with CJ Byers, who works with me, it was our first episode in a series of guys in the canine business, working dog business, somehow that are really good trainers, and you don't know them. They're pretty well known. Maybe even parts of the country they're known, but not really known all over the place. And then at the end of his episode, we talked about what he's doing now. So, like, if you're into working dogs, like you can pivot. Like, you can pivot into a lot of things. And people that are into working dogs tend to really like a lot of different aspects of the working dog. So the last segment in his episode is he started talking about learning to work stock dogs. And I was like, that's cool, man. He showed me some videos and everything. I said, well, how about if we get to the guy who's been teaching you or been working with you and you've been learn from him. So that's who we have, Josh Yarber from Diamond Y Stock Dogs. Josh, how are you, buddy?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. Thanks for coming on. Tell me this is your first podcast?
Yeah. This is the first podcast I've been on, so it'll be a little bit of a learning curve for me. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I love talking about dogs, so who knows how long this can go on. Dogs are my passion, and that's what we really enjoy talking about.
Are there podcasts in this genre, in the stock dog world? Is there somebody's got shows?
Yeah, there's a few. It seems like there's becoming more and more. There's a few really good ones. There's a lot that are dedicated mostly towards like the sheepdog industry. And there's a lot of good, informative podcasts out there.
Cool. I'll have to, I will rabbit hole some weird podcasts that have nothing to do with what I do. So it gets you off onto something else. Well, tell everybody about yourself, where you grew up, how you got into dogs, if it was a kid, everything like that. And, what led us up to today.
Yeah. So I'm from Central Kentucky, just in a little town north of Lexington. Actually, growing up, we always had family dogs, just a household pet, but we never really had any working dogs or anything like that. Growing up, my grandfather, which is who I spent most of my time with, was a farrier or a horseshoer. So you've probably sat around late at night on TikTok or Facebook watching the videos of guys trimming horses' feet. And so I spent my childhood doing that with my grandfather. He, in his younger years, cowboyed a lot, and, that he day worked some, and so for those of you that don't know, day working is a cowboy that just kind of takes a day-to-day job basis with somebody, that maybe just needs help for the day, processing cattle, working their cattle, whatever it may be. And he would kind of do that, and he would go to Wyoming and out west, and he used to rodeo quite a bit. And he would always tell these stories of rodeoing and cowboying. And, as a little kid, hanging out with your grandfather, we're shoeing horses all day. We go home, we watch John Wayne movies in the afternoon. You grow up wanting to be a cowboy. And so spending time with him and all that, that's exactly what I did. or have tried to do. When I got into about high school, I started high school rodeoing and roped and competed in high school rodeos. And then that led me to get a job as an assistant trainer with performance horses. So when I left home, I took a job as an assistant trainer and worked for several years training performance horses. And while I was there, I had, you always hear of, or I had always heard of sheepdogs. When you think of border collies, you think of sheepdogs. And I had seen some videos of some guys working them on cattle. I didn't even know you could. I just thought they're sheepdogs. They work sheep. I never thought about working them on cattle. And so being at the gentleman that I was working for at the time as an assistant trainer, I had a little blue heeler, and so I would try to figure out in the afternoons kind of how to get her to work or how to get her to do something. And it wasn't much. It was kind of a go sick 'em, and she'd kind of run and chase and get everything scattered. But hey, I'd put a down on it, and I could get them to go down an alleyway or get them to do something like that. So that was kind of my introduction to dogs, and I didn't really know anything, but I had a heeler that would kind of chase. So, hey, I was winning right there. But as an assistant trainer, I would see a lot of these guys post videos, or they would have dogs that helped them, or in various aspects of ranch work. And that always intrigued me. I always thought that would be really cool. But I never really had the time to go after it, or I never really knew anybody that trained stock dogs or working dogs. But that's really what sparked the fascination on the working dog side of things for me.
That's really cool, man. It's funny you said that about the hoof. So there's this little restaurant bar place by my house, and we go there on Monday nights after the gym, and they play on the TV all those little ASMR type things, and there's always a video of a guy shoeing like those big, like the ones that have overgrown.
Oh yeah,
and they're shooting, dude. I can just, it's so comforting for some reason. But Ted and I both are scared to death of horses. Well, not scared to death, but we have a healthy respect for horses. The funny thing is, and Ted probably in Tulsa has a little bit more. I don't know, man. We have over here. There's a lot of. It's more like Future Farmers of America type. Kids doing stuff in high school. But I find when you're looking in a dog world for kennel techs, if you can find a kid who grew up around large animals, they do so well with the dogs because they're not afraid.
They're not afraid,
they're not.
Oh, it's just they know how to read stock. They've been around livestock and dogs, horses. All of that's pretty similar in the fact that animals that can't speak move off of pressure, and they understand that.
Yeah, and it helps really well. We don't get a ton of them. A lot of them like to stay in the bigger animals. They don't go in. So when you were a kid growing up doing all the stuff with the performance horses, or even all the stuff like with your old man and everything, who did you have dogs? Were you guys dog people?
Not really. No, not really. I mean, we would have a family dog that just kind of lived in the house, kind of like most people had a dog and would play around with lie down, roll over, sit, stay, that sort of thing, but never was really into dogs the way I'm into them now.
What all have you seen used in stock dogs, breed wise?
As far as like training techniques, or what do you mean?
Just like that you've even worked in, and so Ted and I, in the police world, there's a few breeds, right? There's a few breeds that we use for the police work. Every once in a while, you'll get somebody to come up with a dog. You're like, "Ooh, shit, okay." So, what are some of the ones you've seen that are pretty standard, and even maybe one that you saw that you're like, "No way," and the dog just kills it?
Well, hands down, it has to be the border collies. But so before I really had any knowledge of what a working dog was, or how a stock dog needed to work, how they needed to handle livestock, anything that would go after cattle or stock for that matter was a working dog to me. It went after them. What do you mean it's not a working dog? It's chasing them, So now, we have several different breeds that are stock dogs, working dogs. You have blue heelers, you have Australian shepherds, we have border collies, which are probably the most known, German shepherds. I've even heard that corgis at one point were bred to be working dogs. I'm not sure on that.
Yeah.
But, as far as dogs that go out there and really kill it compared to the border collies, I've seen a couple Australian shepherds that I have personally watched work that I would put up against some border collies. And I was actually very fortunate enough to have one here in my kennel for a little while and got the chance to work him. And his name was Will, and he looks like a border collie without a tail. I mean, he is a very, very talented dog.
Ted, do you guys on the pet side, do you get a ton of Aussies in?
We went through a thing where we had a bunch of mini ones, or they call them. There's no such thing as a mini one, because every time I say it, people freak out and send me a bunch of ads. Don't do that. I know they're not mini. It's just a small one. Anyway, they're like, and it was a puppy. His name was Kiwi, and he was like the size of a football. And we had a blue heeler in, and I had a blue heeler Dutch Shepherd mix. That was
nice.
Oh, dude, that dog was gnarly. And the owner was like, he keeps chasing cattle. And I kind of looked at him like, you don't say. I'm like, really? And he's like, can you stop him from doing it? I'm like, I mean, probably. So all I did was just do a recall on him with an e-collar. But I mean, and this dude had like actual like working dogs. This was his pet, and the pet was just the Dutch Shepherd side he didn't know what to do with.
Yeah.
So
like most people don't.
And three of my staff members have border collies. Lisa, Bailey, and Emma all have border collies. Yeah. Bailey went to the dock diving world championships with Sprite, her border collie. But
nice. CJ's got one or two, I think now. He's got two of them that Josh, I think, talked him into getting into. Do you have down in central Kentucky? Do you guys have a lot of Amish down there?
There's a few in our town here. There's
That's because they all live next to Eric.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Up where you are, there's a lot up there.
Yeah.
So in this area, the reason why I bring it up is they're so deep into massive puppy mill boarding that they've destroyed the German Shepherd breed anywhere near here. And they're working on Aussies now. A lot of Australian Shepherds coming out of it. And I see a lot of healers coming out of the Amish country. And I've seen some really good ones, but then they just go too far and they're inbreeding. And it's not even really good what they're doing. And then, so we have this yesterday. Well, yeah, yesterday when I was on the phones and on the computer, 6 or 7 leads that came in, all people with Australian Shepherds are having problems with, or now Aussie Doodles, but all from Amish country, all of them living in hell with their dogs. So I'm hoping that they don't ruin that breed and then screw up the healers. And it's just mass producing $500 puppies. And so that's what I was asking down there, because they'll interfere with everything you guys got going down there.
Yes, sir. Well, so here, fortunately, we don't have that problem. But to me, if you ask me on a personal opinion of the Aussies and the healers and things like that, and again, this is my personal opinion, and I'm going to catch a lot of trash over this, I know, but I think that breed was pretty well ruined. I shouldn't say ruined. That breed doesn't really carry the characteristics that I personally look for in a working dog. While there are still some, like the dog Will that I was talking about, by and large they don't. And I think that comes from a lot of people have gotten away from breeding for working characteristics and solely breeding for color for a pet industry. And that's kind of the downfall of a lot of working breeds.
Yeah, so like the Malinois and the Dutch Shepherd, I find it hard to believe that they actually were bred to work sheep. I cannot imagine, and I know it happens, and people listening to this are going to get all mad at me because I'm like, but I mean, if you're listening to this and you're not in the canine side, you got to understand that the Malinois and the Dutch Shepherds and the German Shepherds that I deal with have been selectively bred for the last 75 years to bite human beings, and they're not. I would not want to try and train one of these dogs to run cattle or run sheep. Just they will. I mean, one of my local dogs will kill goats like 100%. That's how we got him. He was killing goats on somebody's farm, and he's just, I mean, so I think I've seen some lines that were kind of a little, I don't want to say softer. They're just a lot more softer to people. And I've heard of them working those dogs on cattle or on sheep anyway, not on cattle. But, those dogs were kind of taking the opposite direction. The Northern Europeans were like, we don't really have any sheep and cattle anymore because during the war, they all got killed. So we'll use these dogs now to protect the ones that we're going to use these dogs now to protect the sheep we have left to keep from getting fucking stolen and biting dudes. But now, I mean, almost 100 years later, here we are. I can't imagine like my personal dog, my personal Malinois working a sheep. He tried to destroy an emu. Like he's not like, I can't ever imagine that, but I've seen that happen, especially with the Aussies. Like all the Aussies we get, are very soft. They're very, and I mean soft in terms of correction and soft in terms of the way we handle them. I've had some blue heelers come through that were like Malinois that smoke Marlboros. Like they're hard as Chinese algebra and don't want to be trained. They want to destroy stuff and tear people up. And they're like, we want this dog to live in our house. I'm like, that's a terrible idea. But I mean, we train them, but it's, those dogs seem to be a little more, I think, like concentrated still. And of course, like the little healers, or not the healers, the little border collies. I'm always shocked at how fast Malinois are, especially like little females, but God bless, those things are wicked fast, and watching them work is insane. I have a kid like Eric was just talking about, because where we're at, we have a lot of cattle and stuff here, but one of my old interns was from industry. Now he runs bird dogs and uses, he's a falconer. He has a bunch of like birds that he uses to hunt with. And it's kind of the same thing. And he has pointers, and I think he's now still got his little sheepdog thing that is just fast as shit. And he uses it to work. I mean, it goes to work with him all the time. And I mean, they're cool. I've always loved watching the stock dogs work. I have zero idea how you guys do it, but which I think is what we're going to talk about in a little bit. But
yep. So we're going to go ahead and take our first commercial break. And we come back, we're going to talk about, training stock dogs, the competition side of it, what it looks like, and get into some stuff like that. So stick around, guys. Check out the sponsors. If you can't remember the discount codes, look in the bottom in the show notes. They're in there. And thanks for supporting our people. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, it's me again, back with some more awesome sponsors. I want to talk a little bit about Ray Allen Canine Manufacturing. Who else in our industry allows us to come to them with ideas as handlers, as dog professionals, and say, you know what, I think I would like to make this, or wouldn't this be a good idea? And they will actually sit down with you and talk to you about your designs. I've got a collab with them on a muzzle, on a leash and a collar. They're amazing to work with. Their products are top notch. They're made in America, in Colorado, and we love Matt. So give them a holler, check them out on socials at Ray Allen, the letter K, the number 9, or visit them online at rayallen.com and use our discount code WDR10 RAY for 10% off. Guys, have you visited Dogtra lately? If you go to Dogtra, they have their new online portal, and it's really cool, very user-friendly. You don't have to call them and order them anymore. You can go to mydogtra.com, and they have everything there. You can set up an online profile. They keep your orders. They know what you've used. We use everything, their ball droppers and poppers. We use their e-collars, their 1900S hands-free for our officers, their Q and their 280 for our pet clients. We use all of their products all the time. Eric travels around and does seminars specific to Dogtra, so you can have him come in and teach a class on how to use it. Check them out, dogtra.com, and follow them on their socials. We love kinetic dog food. Ted has been using the large format. It makes excellent tracking treats. He uses it for teaching article indication. It's these huge nuggets of food that you can lay down, grab, put in your trainer's pouch. The quality is excellent. We love Debbie and Dave. We have a great relationship with them. They want to know you. They will talk to you about nutrition, about what your dog's needs are. They'll help get you set up. Their food is available everywhere. We've gotten it off of Chewy. You can buy it at stores. Like, please check them out. KineticDogFood.com. Your dog needs these nutrients, and they are really specific to our industry's needs. They have a full line of supplements now. Please check them out. We'll have some soon that we can give away. Go check them out. Follow them on their socials at Kinetic Dog Food. They'll really appreciate that.
All right, everybody, we are back. Working Dog Radio, broadcasting the bite. Myself, Eric Stanbro, and Ted Summers, who's over in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and our buddy Josh Yarber from Central Kentucky. We're going to be talking all things stock dogs. So here's my only experience with any of this. I worked for a short period of time. You guys know that I worked for a company called Cobra Canine, and Cobra had the East and West Coast Navy SEAL Special Warfare dog contract. And so I went out to California and worked at, and there's a company out in California called Canine Action Sports. And it's this lady, she lives up in, like Escondido, somewhere like that. She's one of the only places approved by the Navy for the West Coast to work off base. And so we go up to her place because she was teaching, I think it was competition stock dogs, but with sheep and goats. And so we would go up there and put explosive odor out in the pens so that we could work the dogs around the odor because of Afghanistan is where we were sending dogs. And so we would put, I'd put odor, say, along the fence, and the dog would start over here at, say I put the odor at 3:00 on the fence, they'd start at 9:00, and they're just working the fence line. And I can't remember if sheep, goats, or both or whatever would be walking behind the handler, everybody walking the direction of the dog. When the handler stopped, they would all stop and turn and face the other way. And as soon as he would start moving again, they would turn and follow. And they would stop and turn and look back. It was hilarious to watch. That's my only experience with it. But talking to CJ, it's really, he showed me some videos and stuff. And I know he went and did a competition, I think, with one of your dogs, and he loved it. And he brought up something, too, at the end of his episode, that there's more to it than dogs. There's other living things inside the pen that you're dealing with. So talk about how you got into the sports side of it and what training looks like for that.
Yeah. So, I've always admired the stock dogs, but I never really got into the sports side of it or the competition side of it until later on. Really, it was out of necessity. And we were running some cows and calves at the time, and I was partnered with a good friend of mine on cows and calves. And so I needed them out of necessity to help get things pinned and to help just with the day-to-day operations. It's kind of a common and funny saying around stockmen, cattlemen, guys that don't use dogs is, well, we're going to sell next week if we can get everything up. And so for us, that just eliminated that. The stock dogs eliminated that if we can get them up. It was going to happen every time, guaranteed. Yeah.
How old were you when you started doing that for work? How old were you when you started doing that for absolute work?
As far as working dogs or farming, ranching,
running the dogs on cattle. Yeah.
Running the dogs on cattle. You could call it fairly recent if you wanted to. It was probably 6 or 7 years ago. I think I still have my very first border collie, and she's going to turn, I think, 7 this year. She's laying right here next to me. It's kind of where she likes to be. So 6-7 years ago.
Is there so any kind of animal industry is weird, and is there like cattle farmers that think it's stupid to use dogs, or they just don't know how to use them? Is it kind of frowned on, or I wish I had a dog type deal? Is there like different schools of thought there?
Yeah. So, here's the thing. How do we make money off of livestock? Okay. Well, to start, I'll mostly talk about the cattle industry. That's what we do. So there's 3 classes in the cattle industry. Okay. You have guys that have cows and calves. Those guys wean their calves from their mothers at a certain weight, or a certain age, I should say. With that age comes a certain weight class. Those calves then go to market and are sold to people like myself. I do what's called yearling cattle, or feeder calves. So what I do is I buy those calves at X weight. I carry them for so many months to X weight, and then we market those calves. Those calves are then purchased by feedlots and then go to be fed to a certain weight and then be processed for the general market, the general public. So we make money off of livestock by livestock gaining weight. Well, how does livestock gain weight? Livestock has to be stress-free in order to gain weight. If they're stressed, they're losing weight. We know that. That is a fact. So there is a thought that if you use dogs on your livestock, right, it creates stress because they're chasing. They're bringing up adrenaline. And that is a very real thing. That can happen if you work dogs improperly. So there are some guys that are against it, because I don't know a single farmer that doesn't have a blue heeler that rides around in the truck that works cows. It's not saying anything bad about blue heelers. There's actually a lady named Erin, I believe her name's Eckert, and she posts videos all the time of phenomenal blue heelers. Awesome. You just don't see a lot of them carry those same genetic traits that her dogs do. She has sought after those dogs. And so those dogs that have come into guys' places and kind of created a muck of things, chase something through a fence or whatever, and it's, hey, I'm done. I never want another dog on this place. So it can be kind of frowned upon, because a lot of guys have had bad experiences, or they've heard or seen somebody that's had a bad experience. And we'll probably dive into this in a little bit, but we use our dogs to train the livestock, essentially. So first we train the dog, and then the dog teaches the livestock through pressure and release of pressure to go where we want them to go. And if things are done properly, there is no chasing. There is no unnecessary stress. It's all under control in a controlled manner.
So the ones I've seen in the videos I've seen, because I watched some of it once CJ started getting into it, the dogs, and I could see where the dogs aren't constantly moving. Like they get to a certain spot and then they're down and then they're moving up. And then so they're not really chasing. They're just moving in short little bursts. So is the dog pressure stress them out worse than human pressure?
Well, so it can be if the dog falls in and chases. Okay. If the dog falls in and there's no release of pressure, if that cow turns and the dog keeps chasing. So we'll address the first thing you said, that most of the time you see a dog and it moves in short bursts. Okay. Now you may have to reel me in here, because as I start answering questions, I'll kind of get to stretching things out and going on tangents. So if you need to bring me back, bring me back. But I assume, and we'll just use this as a general example. Okay. A lot of people are familiar with pull and a pull table. Now we know that the cue ball is used to hit other pull balls. Okay. But let's just use the cue ball as an example. So I have a cue ball right here. All right. And I want to send this cue ball into that corner pocket. Now, if I'm going to take my pull stick and I'm going to hit this cue ball, I need to have it hit in a precise spot to move the cue ball to where I want it to go, right? So this cue ball is your livestock. This is your group of cattle, your group of sheep, your group of goats, whatever. So I need a dog that I can position here and apply pressure like this and move it straight away. If I want everything to go that way into that corner pocket and the dog's coming in this way and doing this, they're going to move it where I don't want it to go. So you have to have the precision to be able to place the dog where you need the pressure to move the cue ball, move the livestock to its designated area. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So your job as the handler is placement, getting the dog in the right place.
getting the dog in the right place.
So that's probably why there's short movements.
That's why there's short movements, because you may need to flank them 2 steps, and a flank is just a movement of either direction, come by or away, clockwise or counterclockwise. So you may need to move them 2 steps to the left or 2 steps to the right to be in the livestock's line of sight to create a little bit of pressure to then move them where you need them to go.
Do cows realize how big they are? By any chance?
They do. Ted was talking earlier about dogs that bite and all that. And oddly enough, when it comes to working cattle, I require a dog that bites and bites really hard. And I need a dog that will use its whole mouth. And the reason that I need that is because cattle are curious. So if you've ever been around cattle and most cattlemen will tell you this, if a feed sack blows out of a truck or there's something foreign in a pasture that cattle haven't ever seen before. And actually I saw a video the other day of a coyote that was injured or something in the middle of a field. All these cattle are going to come to it and swarm to it and see what it is. Okay. So we teach cattle, we teach livestock how to move, right? We teach dogs through the appliance of pressure, but more importantly, the release of pressure, right? So if we're going to then train livestock, which it's in the same class as dogs, they have to learn from the appliance of pressure, but then the release of pressure. The only way that a dog can create enough pressure for a cow to say, I don't want you to be right here, this is not where you need to be, it's uncomfortable, is to bite. And they need to bite hard enough that it sends a message and that cow leaves. The difference is when I educate cattle, I flank the dog and stand them still and I let cattle come to him. When that dog bites and he bites hard and the cattle leave, that dog has to stand there to remove that pressure, to show that cow, if you walk away, there will be no pressure. So then as the process goes on and we're moving these cattle around, there's a cow that wheels around and looks at that dog. He's maybe been bit or his friend got bit or whatever. As that dog walks to him, he's giving him the chance to leave. He's walking to him slowly at a steady pace with steady pressure, going, if you don't leave, by the time I get there, I'm going to apply some pressure. If that cow walks away, great, good. We'll stop, give him a second, let him leave. So they learned through the appliance of pressure that it's uncomfortable to be by the dog. So then you can take those cattle once they're dog broke, stress-free, and send that dog out into a pasture. And he may run to get around him. He should run to get around him. But then he can walk and just direct everything straight to you by applying a little bit of pressure by just looking at cattle, walking towards them.
Now, is the dog, once he's trained up, is he allowed to make the decision to bite, or is that only on command?
He should. He should. So my mentor and good friend, Mr. Roy Cox, one of the things that he says and preaches over and over and over, and it's the best saying I've ever heard, what is training? Training is habits created through repetition. So through repetition, that dog learns when he needs to bite, how he needs to bite, and when to stop and let cattle walk away. Because that's the goal. I'm sorry, go ahead.
How do you teach, like, excuse me. So for us with humans, when we're doing the police dogs, when we were teaching the bite, the difference with us is we really want them to hold on, but we got to teach them to turn their head, and they got to teach them to do that. Are your dogs just going and getting whatever angle, whatever they can, or do you have a process, the fake cow decoy type thing where you get them to turn their head and bite? Like, I'm just trying to figure out how you teach them.
Yep, you don't. It's all genetics. All genetics. You select the dogs that want. So what we say is we'll call them head dogs. So as puppies, genetically, some people believe in stock testing, some people don't. But let's just say, as a generalization, we're going to lay puppies down and just see which ones are interested in livestock. Okay. The dogs that tend to carry those genetic traits when you lay them down on sheep or goats or whatever it may be, they're going to look up towards the head of livestock and they're going to follow that head. Those are the dogs that you might select. Those pups are the ones you might pick up and go, okay, we're going to kind of keep you here for us and evaluate and look as you go. Because what do cattle do when they're curious? They want to see what a dog is. They put their head down and they walk towards them. So you want to select the dogs that even as young dogs genetically, are willing to take that confrontation, that eye contact from livestock and look at them. Those dogs naturally will want to bite the nose. That's where you want them to bite cattle, is just right on the end of the nose. So those dogs genetically will look for that. Now, I have one that loves to bite ears. I call him the Q-tip. That's what he is. I don't know why, but that's what he enjoys to do. So I can't take one that doesn't want to bite and make it bite, just as I can't take one that only wants to bite ears and make it bite the soft part of a nose. You kind of have to select for genetics when it comes to that.
What age are you seeing you move on from a dog?
As far as
this one's just not it.
As
pass on him, like he's not going to.
Yeah, so it goes through stages. Let's say that we lay puppies down. Let's say we have 6 puppies, okay, and we're going to lay them down at 12 weeks old, or people will stock test at various ages, and all you're trying to do is just see interest. And so we'll go through and 5 of the 6 show interest in the livestock. Well, you'll pick that 6th one up and go, okay, we're going to make a mental note of this. This one may be best selected to be a pet for somebody, or agility or whatever. And I'll kind of carry through that same process, and then we'll start the training process. So we have 5 that are for sure hooked on sheep, and they're good. Then we start the training process, and one of them really likes to do it his way, but he doesn't really like to say doesn't like it when we go, I like what you're doing, just don't do it that way. Let me help you. Let me show you. And he goes, I'd rather not. So now we're down to 4. Okay. And we'll just kind of carry through that process. For me, it'll go till I can put them on cattle that are willing to look at them. So throughout the whole training process, my goal is to try to set them up for success, not for failure. Okay. So I'll put them on cattle that won't really stare them down, that won't be very intimidating to them. I want them to feel like they're good. I want them to feel like they can do this. You're confident. Be confident. You're good. You're bad. You're awesome, dude. But the reality of the situation is you're not going to turn them into something that they're not. So then we'll take them and put them on something that's, fresh cattle, something that'll just look at them. That doesn't mean something that's mean or something that's going to potentially hurt them. But if they're going to go on and be a stock dog, that's a real world scenario. If you come to me and you say, Josh, I'm looking for a dog. Awesome. Great. What do you have? Well, I have cows and calves. Okay, perfect. You don't need to see that dog you do for the mechanics and the general work. You do need to see that dog on a few training cattle, because you want to make sure that he works to what you think you may need. But if you're going to buy that dog for cows and calves, you need to see that dog on fresh cows with calves that are going to walk to it, because you need to make sure that he's going to do what you need him to do. So for me, I can carry through and train one, but if they won't take that eye confrontation, if they won't take that eye pressure from cattle, I can't do anything with them. And that's just the way it is. I can't turn them into something they're not. They may be very sweet, they may be great, and they may be a fantastic pet. But if they won't take that eye contact or that confrontation from eye pressure, they just can't make it. And we as humans know how that is. I'm sure all of us have felt uncomfortable by somebody that has a little too much eye contact that's staring us down. Some people can take that better than other people. And it's no different with the dogs. It doesn't mean they're bad dogs. They're just not best suited for that line of work, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarity there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of similarity with pressure and like eye contact, and there's a lot of stuff that we do on the sports side. Yeah, for sure.
Decoy work. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, even detection work. I've had some police dogs that when I got them and they're green, if you look at them too long, they're like, oh, you're what I'm supposed to be messing with, and then it's on. So I can see that. And then the whole you can't make them, and that's why. And the selection is always one of those things. We had Danique on, who's in a completely other part of the industry. She does service dogs for veterans, and she was talking about selection. So it's interesting to hear the selection. Like it's weird to hear that there's some guys in the industry that don't believe that there needs to be selection, because it's a huge topic of debate in Eric and I's part of the industry, like the selection for police dogs for both drug and narcotics and explosive detection only, and then obviously for apprehension, right? And you said something like, if he's not going to do it, he's not going to do it. And I tell people all the time, like, I can't make them bite, I can't make them track, I can't make them search for drugs. In fact, there's only one behavior that I can make a police dog do, and that's out. But outside of that, if they don't want to do it, like, I can't make them do it. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm a talented trainer, but I mean, if he ain't about that life, I mean, what do you want me to tell you? Like, I mean, he's just not going to do it.
Can you salvage a dog that won't take the cow eye pressure into sheep and goats?
It depends.
Yeah, I was thinking when you were saying that, like, is it because of the size of the cow, or like, do they do that with everything? So is it like,
I don't know,
like sheep and goats?
I don't know if
what?
it's the size of the cow. I mean, to be honest with you, if I could answer that question, I'd probably be a millionaire because I could figure out how to change it. But
yeah, that's a good point.
Some dogs will take the eye pressure from sheep and not take it from cattle. And that's kind of why you stair step. So just because that dog may not make it as a cow dog, he may go on and make it as a useful dog for sheep. But I will tell you this. People think that, well, this dog's not tough enough to be a cow dog, so he's going to make it as a sheep dog. We've ran large numbers of sheep, into the hundreds at one time. And I will promise you that there is nothing that puts more pressure on a dog in this world than a ewe with a lamb. Those things can just be ruthless. I mean, ruthless. So, to be a working dog of any class, they have to take some eye pressure. If you look at sheep that are what you would consider range sheep that come out of Wyoming and out of the mountains, those sheep put an unbelievable amount of pressure on a dog. Turn around, stare them down, stomp their foot at them. I mean, a lot of pressure. So they have to be able to take some of that eye pressure. Now, where it could work for somebody is if somebody has a dog, somebody has a group of livestock, a group of sheep, and they've had a dog for, 12 years and he's getting old and everything's dog broke. They could maybe bring a dog in and it maybe work out there. I don't know. That's the only scenario that I think that it could possibly be salvaged is if the livestock was already dog broke because they know to move off of a dog. That dog doesn't have to really back it up or defend himself from confrontation because they know to move off of that pressure of a dog.
Is it different work between the dog doing the cattle and then doing the sheep? You got to handle them differently. Is it all pretty much the same?
So there's two things that a livestock dog needs to do. They need to create movement and then they need to control the movement. Okay. So when you look at a stock dog, and I'm going for a dog that I want to work cattle mostly. Okay. Say that I have lots of fresh cattle or I have cows and calves or whatever it may be. I want a dog that's going to be more apt to create that movement first. And we go back to cattle being curious. Cattle are going to come to them. So that dog needs to be a little bit more confident about walking in and biting something and going, hey, get out of my face. When you go into a pasture with 100 head of, yearling cattle, feeder cattle, they're curious. They're like little kids. They're just going to go to the first shiny thing they see, which is going to be a dog, and go, what are you? So I need a dog that's going to be more apt to bite. So as puppies, when I'm looking at those dogs, you'll see the genetics come out in those puppies because it's just raw potential. Okay, the dogs that are going to be a little bit more apt to create movement, they like to kind of go straight into the livestock. They're very bold young dogs. They want to go right in and see what it's all about. That doesn't mean they're going to run in and bite something, but they're not afraid to go in there. Then you have dogs that like to control movement more. Those dogs are going to be more apt to be really bendy and really wide and kind of cover and maybe go around the outside of the pen. You see those traits a lot with more of sheepdog type traits. And I'm going to go off on a tangent here a little bit. I'm going to go into some genetics in a little bit and why you see that more with dogs from Europe that are bred to be more sheep type dogs. The Border Collie has been bred for over 300 years to go and gather livestock. Okay, so that's what they are. They're a gathering dog, meaning they go get the livestock and they bring it to you. So when we look at dogs that have been bred for 300 years for that, the number one thing that they were bred to work was sheep. So when you look in Ireland and Scotland and the hill country and places like that where these dogs are being used, those dogs had to cover vast areas of country. And they had to get around sheep that were pretty wild, pretty flighty. People might call those sheep here in the U.S. light. meaning that they move very easily off of pressure. Some of them used with lambs, things like that, they still need tough dogs. Don't get me wrong, but by and large, that group of livestock is going to be fairly light and move off of a dog. So they have kind of bred away from bite because that causes problems over there. If a dog grabs a sheep unnecessarily or something like that, you might get infection, you might get fly strike. There's all kinds of problems that can arise from that. So those dogs were eliminated. They weren't brought back into the gene pool because they wanted to get away from that. So those young dogs, when you lay those down, they have a tendency to want to control the movement of the livestock. So they want to kind of go around it. They're more apt to go around it. Now you'll get a few of those dogs that are very forward and want to come in. But what's interesting about a lot of those dogs that are bred to kind of control and cover, they take the eye pressure very well. They're very willing to take eye pressure. They may not have the strength to back it up all the time, or as they would say, to defend themselves, but they take that eye pressure really well. Whereas some of the more bold dogs are very apt to go in and go after the whatever, go right in the middle of the whatever you're exposing them to. Some of those dogs, for whatever reason, maybe don't take the eye pressure as well. So it's kind of a funny thing when you're selecting those young pups. And I've gone off on a tangent. I forgot what your original question was, but
Me too. That's all right though. I gotta. So let's move real quick into the competition side.
Yeah.
What does it look like? How's it scored? And I have a couple of other questions after we get going.
Yeah. So there's a couple different types of trials. There's judge trials, and then there are timed and point trials. Most of what we go to are timed and point trials. And there's nothing wrong with either. I personally just like the time and point trials. The judge trials are more field trials. So those dogs are sent a little further. In the time and point, there are still some field trials, but as a whole, the judge trials are field trials, and they'll send those dogs 300-400 yards sometimes. And there is some components of that. So they'll have to send the dog on an outrun, lift the sheep, pick them up or the livestock up from the far side of the field. And then there are imaginary lines from the judges' booth of, they want to see everything come in a straight line through a set of fetch panels. Fetch panels are just two planks in the field, very similar to this. And you'll want to take the livestock directly through that. And you're judged on straight lines. So it's a straight line from where you lift them through the panels, around the handler's post, and then onto a drive, which is pushing the livestock away from you, and then a cross drive, which is pushing the livestock across the field. And then there's a pin and a sort, things like that, and all that's judged. In the timed and points, each cattle or sheep is worth so many points, so we'll just say 5 points. There's 3 head normally, so 15 points total for each cow that makes it through an obstacle. Now, these are inside of an arena most likely, or a more controlled area, but the obstacles are a little more challenging. There may be certain openings that you're not allowed to go around to, that the dog has to cover, that you can't cover. And so for me, that's very similar to what I do day in and day out with my dogs. So I prefer to go to those trials. And it can be a little more challenging for me just with the different obstacles that they set up. So that's the 2 main types of trials that you see.
Are any of these competitions where you are on horseback at the same time?
Yes, sir. So the National Cattle Dog Association, the NCA, and Roe Deer America both have a horseback class. I believe the United States Border Collies Association does have a horseback class for the sheep, but I'm not sure. But I know that the Roe Deer America and the NCA both have horseback divisions. Roe Deer America is strictly horseback. That is probably one of my favorite trials to go to because it is so centered around real work. When you start out at those trials, you ride into a pen that has between 15 and 30 head of calves. You ride in horseback and you sort out your 3 cows that you're going to trial. So you can't say the cattle were bad or this and that. In any competition, people like to make excuses. And I love it because it eliminates it. You picked them. Can't complain. You picked them. So you take those 3 cows. You have to sort them with your horse. Your dog has to be in the pen as well. You sort those 3 cows out, take them into an arena, and then start your course with your horse and your dog. And it is so real world related that it's just the most fun trial I've ever been to.
You got to get CJ up to that point. I want to see CJ on a horse.
Oh, we will. We will.
Serious.
Yeah.
Be wearing on a horse with tennis shoes, this guy. So, do you ever have, I'll ask 2 questions. One is, on the points trials, is there a way to lose points, or is it you don't get points?
You just don't get points. So most of the time, the way it works, let's say we have a set of fetch panels right here. It's 5 points for every cow that goes through. If 2 go through and 1 doesn't, you got 10 points for that obstacle. You have to move on. In some of the organizations, you can retry. You can retry that obstacle till all 3 go through. And sometimes all 3 of them have to point before you move on. So it depends on the trial host and the sanctioning. But there are some variances. But most of the time, you don't get points if 1 cow goes around or whatever. Okay.
My other question is, do you ever have dogs that you work with at on the farm every day that just don't do that well in the competition, or is it all just the same to them?
No, that's actually a really good question. There are a lot of dogs that win trials that maybe aren't the best ranch dogs, and there are a lot of ranch dogs that just don't trial well. But with that being said, by and large, trials are to show that your dog is biddable, that you can control it, that you can put it where you need it to be. So the dogs that do win trials and that are doing well, most of the time are going to be very well suited for ranch work.
Yeah. Okay. So Ted, when it comes to like PSA, when you're doing the decoy work stuff, are there dogs that do PSA that you don't think would make good police dogs?
Yes and no. I mean, there are some that are definitely sport dogs, which is fine because it's a sport, right? There are definitely some dogs in PSA that belong in the back of patrol cars, without a doubt. That's forever like the debate in our industry, and it will go on long after I'm dead and retired, about sport dogs being not real dogs. And there's an entire group of people in this part of the industry that feel like IPO and Mondio Ring and French Ring and PSA and all these other sports have ruined real working police dogs. That is not the case. It's not my fault they're shitty trainers. But there are some monsters in PSA that belong in police cars, 1,000%. There's the other thing too, like, because if you don't know what's going on in a PSA trial, I mean, it's a very American sport. There's shit going on. It's loud. It's chaotic. There's all kinds of shit going on. And, you look at it and you're like, oh, this dog, like people mistake vigilance they mistake like the dogs being vigilant and thinking that they're not going to bite because of all the control that they put on them. And I'm like, that ain't the case. I guarantee you that. So yeah, I've worked some dogs all over the country in California. And there's a couple like Ricky's dog, Icon. That dog belongs in a police car. And then AB's dog, I don't remember what that big ass dog's name was, but dog's big as he is. That dog was super nice. I saw several down in Texas that they're 100% belong in patrol cars, without a doubt. They will bite a person. They don't give a shit if you got a suit on or not. They don't care.
One last question before we go to commercial break. When you go to the competition, to the trial, are all those dogs, all the cattle dog broke, or are there some that aren't?
Yeah. So all the cattle are dog broke when you go to a trial, just because it would take way too long to dog break them and run them through a course if they came out fresh. But, when you ask about dogs that would make it as good trial dogs as not good ranch dogs or vice versa, that is the biggest thing when it comes to answering that question. Is there are a lot of trial dogs that will take a little bit of eye pressure from cattle, but may not have enough strength to continually bite fresh cattle over and over and over and over again and move them. But they excel really, really well at a trial. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the reality of the sport.
Yeah. Because you're dealing with animals, do you ever have at a trial where the dog had to do a bite?
Yeah, occasionally. Because it happens. Sometimes cattle will just kind of get stuck, or sometimes there are some curious ones that'll walk to a dog. But it's all about how they bite. because I've seen a lot of dogs that bite, but an uncontrolled bite is useless. It's as useless as a dog that won't bite. They have to bite correct, and they have to bite clean, and they have to bite under control. If it's full of emotion and adrenaline and not precise and not clean, it's useless.
I like that. Makes sense. All right, we're going to go ahead and take our next commercial break. When we get back, we're going to talk about something maybe a little controversial in the stock dog world when we get back. So stick around, guys. Listen to the commercials, please.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. Please check out our friends Jason and Aaron Perguson at Highland Police K9. If you guys are interested in going to school, if you've come out of the military, you can use your GI Bill to go through their school. They have a pet training school, they have a police training school, they have online courses that you guys can take, such as their K9 supervisor course. You guys can really take that as far as you want with them. They are a veritable fountain of knowledge when it comes to K9. They're located in North Carolina. They're always accessible, always available, and we've had such a long relationship with them. I cannot say enough good about them. So please check them out. If you go to Tactical Police K9 Training, go to their online programs, check them out, use the discount code NARC for 20% off any of their online courses. Guys, that will help you. It'll help you make headway in this industry. I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times when we're talking about dog kennels and their construction, like you don't know where to start. What do I do? What do I add? I need to weatherproof this, waterproof this, pee-proof this. If you guys have checked out Horizon Structures lately, it's unbelievable. They literally have everything that you could possibly need. They can build your kennel with as many holes as you want in it, and they can drive it out to you, set it on your pad, hook it up, and you can move dogs in it immediately, from mild to wild, from one kennel all the way up, from the tiniest of pet runs to the hardest of working dogs. If you can dream it, they can build it. Go ahead and check them out at horizonstructures.com. Go specifically to their working dog area. It's commercial-dog-kennels. Give them a call, 888-447-4337. And of course, check them out on their socials at Horizon Structures, and they will hook you guys up. American aluminum has been such an asset to us. Our officers have their canine inserts. They have organizational lockers for the back of your patrol vehicle. They literally have just now put out an amazing heat system and alarm that integrates with their canine insert. Guys, they do it all. Give them a call. Check them out. It is high quality. It's made here in America. If you go to Easy Rider online, check them out, or give them an email at quotes@AAA-mail.com, or give them a phone call, 800-277-0869, and check them out. We also want to send a huge shout out. He recently passed away. Rest in peace, Brother Deeg. Thank you for our music. Thank you for the permission to use it. We really appreciate it, and we hope that you're doing well on the other side. Thank you guys for listening.
All right, everybody, we're back. Working Dog Radio, broadcasting a bite. It's been an amazing conversation because not one thing that you have said that I know anything about. So this is beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it.
You're just saying a bunch of stuff like you said cattle broke a minute ago, and I'm like, what? And then you start talking about it. I was like, oh, okay, I know what he means now.
Yeah, if I say anything
they
like
them
that,
in the fucking legs.
Yeah, just stop me and just, hey, what does that mean? Because
it's good.
I go off on tangents.
It makes people Google it.
Yeah.
No, it makes them Google and look it up. So I'm over here, got my phone over here. I'm going, what the fuck is that? So in your, one of the things that we started talking about, or excuse me, you and CJ, and then me and CJ started talking about, was the use of e-collars, which in your world is, I believe, kind of frowned upon. You have started probably pissing some people off, maybe getting some folks that are curious, and because you're breaking old ways and stuff like that. But you have started playing with the e-collar. I don't know how much experience you had with the e-collar in the beginning. I know we talked about this, and CJ and I talked about, you bought my book, and that gave you some insight on a few things. But when you understand, the thing about it is going from no e-collar to e-collar, if you understand pressure, which you understand, you're now understanding how do you really use the pressure on the dog with the e-collar. But you're doing things different than a lot of people are doing. Talk about what got you to try the e-collar and what you've been doing with it and how it's going.
This is a really, really interesting thing to talk about. And I'm really happy to get to talk about it here, especially with a couple people that understand e-collars and understand how they work. In the stock dog industry, it is heavily frowned upon to use e-collars. And I'll talk a little bit about why I think that is. To me, we have, and you guys can tell me if you think I'm wrong. I want you to, because these are the conversations that I want to have. My thing is all about learning. And I love talking to people about dogs. I will cold call somebody that if I see the way your dog's work and I like it, I will cold call you and ask you your opinion because I want to learn. I think that there's something to be gained from talking to everybody, even if it's what not to do, even if you learn something that you don't want to do. I think it's a great thing to do, to have conversations with other people and to discuss training methods and whatever. I think that a lot of the pushback in the stock dog industry, comes from a lack of understanding how to use an e-collar and how e-collars properly work or can properly work. And so where I think what happens is, or what has happened in the past, is I think people have gotten a hold of dogs that are just genetically dishonest. And as much as people want to argue and say that that's not a real thing, if you do your homework and you do your training and you do it properly and you take your time, you can get through it. I don't think that's true. I think they're genetically dishonest dogs. And I think that the minute that they get a free chance to cheat you, they will. So what people will do is they would strap an e-collar on it and go, okay, I'm going to show you. Now, I don't know, but this is just my speculation. Out of desperation and people being upset and at their wits' end, and they overuse it, they have it at a too high of a stem level, and it shocks the dog into submission, and that dog listens with the collar on because it got a huge reprimand when it was doing something that they did not want it to do. And it may be because it was being too aggressive on livestock, hurting livestock. Okay. So it's a lot of pressure, and that dog gets to where it's controlled and is easy to handle. The problem is there was no foundation laid on that dog with an e-collar. So when the minute that collar came off, guess what? Oh, I'm free. Falls right back into the same habits. So the general stock dog world would look at it and go, see, that's a Band-Aid. All it did was mask the problem. With the collar on, it's good. With the collar off, it goes right back to doing what it was going to do. That's true. It did. But that's because that was a genetically dishonest dog. So my goal has been, how can I incorporate an e-collar? Not only because it started out the same way. I got this dog that if she could just listen, she would be phenomenal. Well, she was genetically dishonest. It wasn't going to happen. So through reading your book and learning and talking and trying to understand more about the e-collar, now it is morphed into, how can I apply this to all of my dogs and have them accept it? And the biggest thing that I've learned was when I started out, the e-collar that I used did not have a wide enough range. One wasn't really a low setting. Yeah. One was like a 60 on what I have now. So for a lot of dogs, it would shock them. It would turn them off. They wouldn't want to work stock because it scared them. And so, the more that I've learned about proper appliance of pressure through an e-collar and a range of stems, it's made everything night and day different. Because all dogs are different, right? So when we start these dogs, we'll start them in a round pen. Some people use square pens. But all of these dogs, and we talked about this earlier, they learn from the appliance of pressure, but more importantly, the release of that pressure. Okay. So a herding dog's genetic instinct is to go to the livestock. They want to bring it to you. At first, it starts out as a chase. Okay. So when we step into that pen, whether it be a flag or and what I mean by flag is just a little livestock flag. It's like a little lunge whip with a tiny little flag on the end, and it kind of flaps in the air when you wave it, and it kind of creates a little bit of commotion. And sometimes that will create a dog to kind of move out a little bit. So as he's wanting to come to the livestock, if you kind of wave it and smack it on the ground in front of him, and he moves away from the livestock, you've taught him, move away from this pressure. You back up and let him come to his livestock, and I'll give back to you. I'll give you what you want. So how do we teach those dogs to go around livestock and only put pressure where we need them to apply pressure? That's how it starts. There has to be some mechanics behind what we do. If there is no foundation and no mechanics behind what we do, it's pointless. The dog's just chasing and doing whatever he wants. Now, there's some dogs that genetically want to be a little wider and not come into that livestock's pressure zone, and they're more apt to be a little easier to train and a little better. But some dogs don't have as what's called as much feel. And so they don't feel that pressure from that livestock. Some puppies, you lay them down and they slowly creep up, and you can see that border collie intensity. When you think of border collies, that's what you see, that intensity of those dogs moving into that livestock. So as a young dog, we would say that dog has a lot of feel. Well, the other dogs, the dogs that want to create that movement, can be a little more abrupt about it. So you have to spend a little bit more time going, hey, no, don't come in here. You're allowed to do it. Just do it out there. Move over here. Don't disturb them. If you do like I'm asking you to, I'm going to let you have them. So it starts by creating a little bit of pressure. You step to them with the flag. You bump the flag. When they open up and continue to move, you give back and let them come into their livestock. You'll walk through them, bump the flag, they open up, and that progresses, right? So what I do, because my goal is to trial these dogs without a collar, so I don't want them to be reliant on it. I just use it as another tool to obtain the goals that I'm looking to obtain, right? As my mentor Roy would say, training is habits created through repetition. So I want to have correct repetitions. Where I really fell into a hard time with it is I would have these dogs I would send them on a 100-yard outrun. So literally the sheep's 100 yards from me, okay? And everything would be really good and really, really solid. In a set-up training scenario, I would send them 120 yards, and the sheep may pick up a little bit and take off a little bit. Well, that dog's young. He's inexperienced. What's he do? He falls in. He starts chasing a little bit. I'm 120, 30, 40 yards away. I've got to start hauling it to him to get to him to create a little bit of a reprimand, whether it be physical pressure, whatever, just presence. Hey, stop. Don't do that. By the time I get to him, to me, I'm way past the place that I needed to correct him because he's already chasing. So if I could have been able to communicate with him a little better at a little further distance, I could have curbed some of that. And so that's where the e-collar has come in for me. But it's not and you see you see some guys that will use it as I said lie down, right? And we stem them, lie down, stem. You have to give the dog a chance to make the correct decision. So for me, it goes in steps, right? I will, let's say on an outrun, okay? I've got a dog that I set up and he's leaving on an outrun and he's a little tight. So I stop him. Same as the round pen. I step to him with some physical pressure. He doesn't open up. I may use my flag. He kind of thinks about it. I may step to him again, wave the flag, and stem with an e-collar. And when he opens up, I encourage him to go and say, that's exactly what I wanted. So it's in stages. Physical pressure, okay, a little bit of visual pressure by a flag or whatever, and then stem. Then pretty soon I can drop the stem, drop the flag, step to him, and then pretty soon he learns, I don't need to be here, I need to be here. And they open up. With all that being said, it's pointless if you don't have a foundation on your dogs. They have to have an understanding of what that pressure means. If you just go to strapping an e-collar to them and try to shock them into submission, you're going to get nowhere and you're going to shut them down. They're not going to want to work the livestock. Point blank.
Yeah. And you said some things, and I was going to come back to it. I'm glad you said it, that, training is nothing more than a lot of repetitions, right? So my mentor, one of my mentors told me a long time ago, he's like, dogs are selfish animals, and we spend all of this time and effort and money selecting them for police work, or in your case, selecting them for cattle work or trial work or whatever, right? Same thing with the hunting guys. They select them for bird work. And we spend all this time and money and effort and all the skill and whatever to do it. And then we're pissed when the genetics, like we select these dogs for their genetic potential, and then the genetic potential comes out and you're like, yo, that's not what we meant. You're like, hold on a second. So like, and once that genie for the police side, once that genie comes out of the bottle, like once, for where Eric and I run into it is the unmitigated, just overt aggression that's out of control. And like dogs just nuking people that they shouldn't, dogs tearing people up that they shouldn't, or maybe they should bite them, but the damage is like pretty excessive. And, we can't get pissed at them. Well, I mean, we teach dogs to bite people and act shocked when they do. So for us, it's a control thing more than anything else. And it's a communication deal. And it's really interesting because a lot of the same problems that you talk about have a common thread through police work, through pet work, apparently through stock dog work. There is one group of dog owners that I think would probably like gasp if you were like, can you do that without an e-collar? And that's the hunting dog guys. I can't, and I know I'm going to get some messages about this, but some of the best e-collar trainers in the world are bird dog trainers. So we've had some on the show like Freddie King and Pat Nolan and all those guys that are every time, and they're those dudes that when you talk to them, you're like, I've forgotten. Like you're like, I'm going to stop training dogs now because I'm never going to be this good. It's like talking to those dudes. And it's an interesting to hear because like on the pet side, we have a group of people that don't like using e-collars because they think that it's whatever mean, or I don't know, like, and those people I don't care about. And when I have to confront, or when I have to deal with those people, not clients, but other trainers that do that, I'm like, there is an entire group of dog trainers on this continent that, I mean, and if you've ever watched a forced retrieve or a forced fetch or a forced a pile or force anything, like that's a capital F on the hunting side. Like they will plug dogs in like Christmas trees, but pointers and labs and all those dogs that are successful in that are bred for that. So you can layer a ton of e-collar pressure on them. And you're right. Like watching new trainers with e-collars, like Eric, you can weigh in here in a second. Like when I hand them a remote, when I hand my new canine handlers remote, I'm like, okay, so this is how this thing works. And I have to go through this whole process and we explain how it works. And I have to help the trainer, or I have to help the handler as well. Same thing with my pet clients. But there is an imprinting phase, right? And you hit the nail on the head, right? And as you're like going through this and saying like what this dog has to do, I'm like, God bless. If he's 100 yards away, like how do you influence behavior at 100 yards? How do you influence behavior at 60? Like I can't, I can only yell so fucking loud. I mean,
well, I'll tell you a funny story.
And then does my voice have any weight?
Yeah. Well, so I'll tell you a funny story that actually aligns with that. So my very first dog, gentleman started her. I didn't know anything. I bought a border collie puppy, and I was excited. And I'd send her there for training, and I'd go watch, a couple times a month. And she was excelling. She was really doing well. And he was sending her on big outruns. And it was getting close to time for me to take her home. And I went over and I said, hey, can you show me how to work her? Yeah, no, absolutely. We should. Okay. He said, so you're going to send her on an outrun. The sheep are 150 yards away. When she gets on the backside, I need you to lie her down. Just tell her to lie down. That's all we're going to work on. Send her and make her lie down. All right, I can do that. Yeah, I raised this dog. I can make her lie down. So I sent her, and she went. And here she comes picking up the sheep. And all right, lie down. Nothing. Here they come, barreling. He's like, hey, wave your stick. So I'm waving the stick. Lie down. He goes, hey, bang your stick on the ground. So I do. He goes, throw it at her. So I throw it at her. Here the sheep come past me, And he goes, you have got to make her lie down. I said, I banged my stick on the ground. I've screamed. I've yelled. I've done everything. And she doesn't listen. What am I supposed to do? And I mean, out of control. I had no control on this dog. And then I was fortunate enough that I met a gentleman named Roy Cox, and Roy really helped me a lot. And he taught me the mechanics of a working dog and why they should do it, how they should do it, the what, when, where's, and how's of the stock dog world, or of the stock dogs, and how that things should look and should be. And so I started implementing so much of his program into my training program. And I've seen such a big difference now when I layer the e-collar on top of it. But, you know, the biggest thing that I've heard, too, in the stock dog deal is that, like I said, those dogs learn to lay on it and to rely on it. And so I'm curious to ask you guys about it. For me, so far, in my experience, it's been nothing more than just a training tool. It's just been another piece of the pie to get these dogs to excel and to have a better understanding, a clearer understanding. And it seems like for me that once these dogs have a clear understanding of what I'm looking for, there is no reliance on it if it's used as a tool to help gain that understanding, not as a force tool to forcibly make them do what you're asking them to do.
Yeah. So what in my book, I talk about there's just a thing where guys throw the e-collar on the dog and they wonder why the dog shut down or got aggressive or whatever. And it's because they don't know why they're feeling that thing and they don't know how to shut it off. For us, that we fix that with leash. You know, we do a leash. So that's why we got to teach everything and then start layering the e-collar over them. Now, for you guys, are you layering the e-collar over the flag the same time type deal, or how do you start introducing it when
that's
you're
how
doing that?
Yes, sir. So that's how I started. But originally for me, like with my puppies, before they're really old enough to start, right? I mean, you can let them around stock. The genetics tell them to go to stock, but they can only absorb so much training. Their mind can only take in so much. Okay. So before they're really ready to absorb some training and to enjoy it, I do general obedience. And I try to really get my obedience strong. Couple reasons. One, I think it opens their mind up. I think it makes them more susceptible to learn and to understand that learning pressure. So I think it gives them a little bit of a foundation to go in to work on stock. The second thing is it's an insurance policy. These dogs have a very high drive to work. The last thing that I want to do is be somewhere and them see livestock across the road somewhere and take off and get ran over by a truck because their genetics and impulses were telling them to go after the livestock across the road, and I couldn't recall them.
Yeah, correct. So like for me, and like I have a 6-year-old lab at home who's trained on an e-collar, and she really hasn't needed to wear an e-collar for the last few years. And if she's out in the yard, you know, she might be a half acre away, and I say come, she comes. It's without the e-collar because it's been taught to her. But if you think about it, guys who say that, well, it only works when they take it off, or it doesn't work when you take it off, it only works when you have it on. A lot of those guys, if they paid attention, I bet their dogs don't move until they start coming after them or till they get to a certain point with human pressure. So what's the difference?
Well, so I think what a lot of guys will do is they'll keep the training the distance a lot closer, right, to where there is less steps needed to that physical pressure. And I don't think that it really changes too much in how I use it with an e-collar. It just seems to me that it's a more clear way to communicate to that dog a little sooner. And I think as long as, like you're saying, it's layered with something and not just a shock to submission, those dogs look for that answer and understand it. And that's been the biggest thing for me, is that I'm able to get a very clear understanding out of these dogs.
Yeah, and I think Ted and I both came up through an era originally, and I know I did, when if the dog wouldn't recall, like off of a bite, go up and turn around and come back when you called him, you just throw an e-collar on him and blast him. Mm-hmm. And then you wonder why the dog runs off through the field or won't touch the guy or whatever, because there's no context, or won't go.
Because they do 900 fucking recalls in a row, and the dog's like, why would I go? You're going to call me back, bro. Yeah. So like, oh, no, I ain't going. But
and I like the e-collar for your stuff is smart because it's tactile pressure from 100 yards, you know, and that type of stuff works, that tactile communication.
Yeah, and you're using genetics too, right? And I know fuck all about this, but you're using genetics. So the dogs naturally want to be there. They want to go to it, right? So you're not having to worry about, loading the e-collar and positive, or well, you are talking about positive punishment, but like negative reinforcement and negative punishment and all these other things, which I'm sure you could use. But like all of that shit's there versus, on like our side of this thing, I'm asking dogs to do things that when they were bred, well, now they are, but like when these breeds were invented or whatever, they were not thinking about us like tracking dudes at 3:00 in the morning to bite this dude in a tunnel, like in a drainage tunnel. Like that's not why these dogs were bred. Like same thing. They were never bred to look for narcotics or explosives. They were never bred for that shit. So I'm asking these dogs to perform a task that might not seem like they're like, why would I do this? Like, why do I need to do this? And one of my old mentors told me, they're like, dogs are the best scorekeepers in the world. Every interaction they have with a human being or another dog, I don't let my dogs play with dogs, but with a human being is a win or a loss, right? They either want something or they want to get away from something or whatever it is. So there's no gray area. And for me, with the police dogs, like for example, my next handler school is in March, and I'm gonna have like 17 handlers in that school. Some of those dogs aren't even in the United States yet, so I have that amount of time to train that amount of dogs to that level, and I'm not doing that without an e-collar. And I'm just not. But I use it much different, like for tracking. I can't tell you the number of times I've been told in my career that I'll ruin a dog by using an e-collar during detection work or during tracking. And I do both. Mm-hmm. And like people watch me do it and they're like, oh shit, that's a cool idea. How'd you do that? And I'm like, well, so about that. And I didn't invent any of it, but it becomes this super clear communication. So behavior tracking is the perfect example. Tracking used to take months to get operational. And I'm not talking about sport tracking or trial tracking where they're like counting the fucking steps. Like leave it to the Germans to suck the fun out of everything. But they're like counting the number of fucking steps that you take during tracking. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm literally talking about winning hide and go seek and being on known tracks or known areas and then having to convert between area searches and building searches and like having the dogs find evidence and everything else. But an e-collar shortens that time for me by almost over a month, like per dog. Like I can get them on tracks in a few days and have them successful and starting aging by the end of the week, which normally, I was taught you need dog to tracking for 4 months before you can start aging. I'm like, 4 months? Out. What the fuck? Yeah. You know who told me that.
Yeah. Who's got time for that?
Yeah. And now I'm aging tracks in like 6 days. So, and they're successful. I mean, my guys get right out of school. They'll graduate on a Friday and they'll find somebody on Monday. So like, I know it works, but we had Brad Gillespie on from Canada, and all we're doing in detection work and in human odor work is we're making odors that are inconsequential, right? So I'm making explosive or narcotic odor or human odor consequential to the dog, and it's not just a background odor anymore. But there's a whole other process that goes into that you guys, I don't think that the stock dogs have to worry about. But you're using genetics and you're controlling genetics, right? So you select these dogs that are already like, oh, I'm going to go check this cow out, bro. Mm-hmm. And you're like, okay, that's fine. Just relax for a second, homie. And I would imagine that if you use a new dog, well, so a green dog, or what we would call a green dog, that has no training, right? No foundation, has a very little bit of a foundation. He's already got the obedience you talked about. I would imagine that the timing is a lot easier to use if you're using cattle that are already dog broke, right? Like they already know how to play the game. So Absolutely. They're in turn teaching the dog like, hey.
Well, yeah. So everything that like the stock that we train on are dog broke. So that is a big reward because they move off the dog. It just satisfies that urge to bring stuff because when that dog gets in behind them, they're bringing them. One of the things that you said, I want to touch on because it very much is I think how these dogs perceive the collar pressure with what I do. I think it's very much positive pressure with these dogs. So, it's not a punishment. And I think that's what people always fall to is it's a punishment. It's no different than any other training aid you may use. Some guys will roll up a feed sack and smack it.
The only other piece of equipment that you guys have, right? Yeah, the only piece of equipment that you guys have is a cattle prod.
Well,
everyone here is familiar with that.
But I mean, it might be smacking a feed sack that's rolled up because it creates a loud noise. And anyways, those dogs learn that when they give to your pressure, they get what they're wanting to do back, right? So we apply the pressure to put them in the correct position. When they're in the correct position, good job, walk up, walk up, walk up. And that gives them, oh, okay, awesome. So if I do this, I get to do that. So with my dogs with the collar, I have found that they are a little more excited about working because that pressure is so clear to them and so precise that they go, oh yeah, open up. And sometimes they're starting to get too wide and running too hard. And I'm having to go, hey, come here, come in here, you overachiever, right here. Because it's very clear to them. They understand.
Yeah, and you're using that pressure, and when you remove the pressure, it's a reward to the dog, and they start to figure that out. And the nice thing is, you can move them, say, on that outrun without talking. Like you can use that pressure and get them moving when they understand it. Because I don't care who you are and what industry you are in this, if the human has to get involved a lot, verbally or even by physical pressure, some of the dogs will wait to hear from you or wait till you move towards them to do it. So what is the difference than saying the dog is only obedient when the collar's on? What's the difference in the saying, well, your dog only listens when you yell at them or you say something or you physically get involved?
By waving the stick around or whatever.
Right. This is where guys, and I get in the training specifically with that, but this is where guys, their argument falls short, in my opinion, when it comes to the e-collar. Well, your e-collar reliant is not whatever. Well, your dog is like, fuck you until you prove you're going to move over here. Yeah. Or they're not going to do it until you physically yell at them or you say something. There's no difference, in my opinion. So I think that's kind of kills their argument a little bit.
Yeah, well, and so we talk about the dogs that are a little more of a create movement dog. Those dogs aren't as natural to kick and to get wide. So when we talk about their outruns, how should a dog make an outrun, okay, for people that don't know? A dog should be wide enough away from the stock that they don't disturb the stock, but close enough that the livestock can see the dog. So they're in contact without creating movement, okay? Dogs that want to control that movement are very wide. They have a little more feel because they're feeling that pressure and they're slowly moving in. Where dogs that want to create that movement, they're going, I'm going to bite that one right there. And they're making their way in. So it needs to be very clear to those dogs, no, remember your training, open up. So I may get those dogs really solid at 100, 120 yards where I'm still within a training window or in a perfect scenario, right? But where it would fall apart is when I'd start advancing their training. I would send them 150 yards and I would hide the cattle. Okay. So the cattle would be over a small hill. So we start doing what's called a blind outrun. So I want that dog to run. He knows there's cattle out there somewhere. Cattle are over a hill. Okay. He's making an outrun and he caps this hill and he sees them. So he's here. What he should do to not disturb the livestock is then bend at a 90 and travel around them and pick them up and bring them to me. Does that make sense? So you take a young dog that is good within a certain distance, you hide your cattle and you set him up and he comes up over the hill and he goes, oh, there you are. How do you fix that when they're 200 yards away? Okay, so one of the tools that we use is this little thing right here called a shepherd's whistle. Okay, it's just got two countersunk holes drilled through it, and that's what helps us teach these dogs at a distance. So we'll put whistles on them for their flanks. Well, what I've been able to do at a distance is when that dog's out there, because he understands the communication from the e-collar, it's no different than he is if he's 100 yards. Doesn't matter how far he is. I can apply a stem with that collar. He sees the livestock and he goes, oh yeah, that's exactly what we did back there at 50 yards. And he breaks and goes around because it's clear communication. So what is training? Habits created through repetition. So I can communicate with him at those distances and get that clear communication and get those habits formed that I'm looking to form. Whereas before I'd be screaming, lie down and going out there and I'd be so mad and tired by the time I got there. And he looks at me like, oh, I was having fun. What are you pissed
about? Yeah, you run
about?
120 yards.
You know?
Fuck that.
So it's broken that barrier. And those dogs are excelling. I mean, excelling at those greater distances because it's clear. They understand what's going on. Why somebody wouldn't use an e-collar is beyond me. But I truly think it's for a lack of understanding. And I would really encourage everybody that is interested in it with the stock dogs to read your book, because it really helps people understand about layering it and positive pressure and how to actually go about using it. That's the biggest misunderstanding that I've found. But I'm telling you, listen, I catch a lot of heat for saying that I use an e-collar. And I'm not, my thing is this, I'm just going to be transparent and honest. And if you like it, great. And if you don't, that's okay too. But it really works for me, and it works for my dogs, because the reality of the situation is these dogs are away from us. They have to enjoy what they're doing. I have no control over them once they leave my side. Once I unhook a leash, they have to continue to want to do it. I can't force them into doing something they don't want to do. So when they're 200 yards away and they're still listening and moving off of this e-collar pressure, it's because they understand and they want to, not because I'm forcing them to do something.
So this is going to sound, this is going to tell you how ignorant I am on cattle. When they go up over the hill and they're going to go around and get them, how good are cattle senses? Can they smell the dog? Can the dog surprise them?
It can surprise them, and that's why we want those dogs to break the minute they see those cattle on a blind outrun. Because what if those cattle, okay, I'll tell you a quick story if you have a minute. I got called, and I do this occasionally. But I got called to go pin some cattle for a family that lives down the road. These guys called me. They said, "Hey, could you come out and pin some cattle for us?" I said, "Yeah, no problem." And it was referred, family, friends, whatever. So I go out and I say, "So what's the deal?" And they said, "Well, we've got about 30 head of cattle out here." And they said, "We've tried to get them up for years. We haven't been able to get them up, but the farm selling is contingent on the cattle being gone. So we're not going to get any money. We're not going to get this place sold if the cattle aren't off of it, and the deadline's tomorrow." I was like, all right, okay. So where are
No
they?
pressure.
What are they? Right?
Thanks for giving me a heads up.
Yeah, no kidding, right? So where are they and what are they? Cows and calves, yearlings, whatever. And they go, "Well, they're bucking bulls." And I said, "Like rodeo, bucking bulls." Like, yeah, they're bucking bulls. Okay. So the thing to know about
Now
bucking
it makes
stock
sense. Like, why
is
they keep...
they're very flighty. Their fight or flight is very high, and they will run at first until they decide they want to fight, and then they fight. Now, one of the things to know about bucking stock is their horns, okay? They have to be tipped. Well, if you can't get them up, you can't tip their horns, okay? So when we go out to pin these things, keep in mind they've tried for years and years and years to pin them. And what happens is everything gets by the pin, and let's think about our dog training. Things have been over-pressured. So they don't want to go to the pin, because the minute they got close to the pin, everybody rushed in and tried to chase them into the pin, right? So I had to have dogs that understood how to feel the pressure of livestock and not disturb them. So when I took those dogs out there, you asked if the cattle can smell them and all that. Well, they can feel that pressure of that dog. So those dogs had to kick and get around and group those cattle up and not overpressure them. So what we ended up doing was we would take them towards the pens, and those cattle would break and go to leave, and they would split and run. I'd just stop the dogs and let them leave. And I'd go to wherever they wanted to be, and I would apply pressure. Sometimes a couple cows got bit. Sometimes it was just the dog walking up. So what did we do? We created pressure everywhere else on that farm except for the place I wanted them to go, which was the pens. So we got them close to the pens, and we got them loaded up there at the mouth of the pen. And I told the lady that owned the cattle, I said, "Listen, 2 or 3 are going to walk in, and they're used to being overpressured, and they're going to turn around and run out." That's exactly what happened. I said, "They're going to do that 3 times. They'll go in halfway, they'll run out. They'll go in halfway, they'll run out." But continuing to apply pressure where we didn't want them to be and leaving where we wanted them to be with no pressure, we pinned them. And these things were bad. I mean, they were awful. One of the cows, actually, when we loaded them on a trailer, we got them shipped. At the stockyards, when they went to sell those things, one of them was bad. I mean, she got to hooking people. She was bad. It was a bad deal. They were pretty intense. But
wow.
By creating pressure where we didn't want them and no pressure where we wanted them, we were able to move them. So if I would have had a dog that just saw those cattle and busted in, it would have blew the whole thing up. I wouldn't have been able to pin those cattle because I couldn't have applied pressure where I needed to apply it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So how much you charge for something like that? Like, is
Seriously, that sounds fucking dangerous. Like uncapped,
I
pissed
enjoy
off,
working my dogs. I
bucking
didn't charge
bulls
them.
that don't want to go. Oh God!
Yeah, I bet that happens a lot, though. You know.
Yeah.
In
Come
this,
on, when
any
they
kind
sold
of-
them, you got some meat though, right? You got to. I got to have. Cow.
Well, so I don't know. I don't know if you want to edit this out or not, but the cow that was actually bad at the yards, she ended up jumping out of the pens and was chasing people down in the parking lot. And they actually had to put her down, and that's her above me right there on the wall.
Definitely not cutting that out.
That's her above you.
Yeah, that's her.
Yeah,
dude.
That's her right
Nice.
there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Bitch up there.
I was going to say, like, I ain't doing that. The only time I'm fighting a cow is with a steak knife.
Well,
I ain't doing that.
Pay homage to that bad bitch up there.
Yeah.
This has been amazing, dude.
Definitely not cutting that out.
I'm happy we talked to a cattleman this long and nobody said bull semen, because anytime I talk to cattlemen parts of the year, that's all they talk about because there's so much money in it and everything like that. But well, this is amazing, man. We may have to do another one of these with you and expand it a little bit further. This is going to get some interest. I bet there's going to be a lot of YouTube videos people are going to be watching going, I got to see what the hell this guy's talking about.
Yeah.
They're going to want to see the skull.
Yeah, that's right here.
Do you have
fucking hanging on the wall behind you? Oh, God.
Do you buy your dogs from a breeder, or are you breeding now?
You know, so I breed a few. I really try to focus on quality over quantity. I've always been a big believer in that. So I have a small kennel set up here. So I breed a couple of very nice females. In order for me to breed a female, I really have to believe in them. They have to be proven in multiple aspects of what I do. Trialing, ranch work, and they have to be very biddable and very easy to be around. And they also have to genetically be bred a certain way. You know, I don't really consider myself a breeder. There are a lot of other people out there that are better on genetics. So I breed a few litters a year. I like to buy a few good prospects every year. So yeah, we have a few pups, but mostly I try to select and buy from people that have been breeding for years.
So do you have anything you want to promote? You got some trials coming up. Do you want to promote anything at all?
Yeah, you know, I mean, just being here and talking about these dogs and promoting the stock dog industry. I mean, really, like you said, we've talked for a while, but there's not enough time. I mean, I could really go on for hours and hours about stock dogs. If you're interested in it at all, you have questions, you have anything, you just want to talk about the stock dogs, feel free to reach out to me. Diamond Y Stock Dogs on Facebook. You can find us there. We're on TikTok as well. And I've got a few videos on YouTube of dog breaking. We took a group of, there's like 180 head of yearlings in two different groups. And they were bad. They were flighty. Their flight zone was a really, really wide flight zone. They wanted to tear fences down. And in 3 days, I dog broke those calves, the two separate groups with three different dogs. And in 3 days, we took them to the pens and pinned them, left the pens open and rode away, and every calf stayed in the pen, didn't leave. It's a really cool set of videos to see. But watch those videos. If you're interested in the stock dogs at all, reach out to me. I love talking to people about it. There is a trial that I'll be at in Jackson, Ohio in February. I think it's the 7th through the 9th of February. And that would be a good trial for people to go see if you're interested about it or want to learn more or just be a spectator. They're very fun. It's an awesome
is CJ
deal
going to that one?
I think he is. Yeah, I think CJ's going. He better. I don't know why he wouldn't.
You know,
other than being lazy.
Eric, this would make, you remember at one point we were talking about like a Netflix show? This would make an excellent episode of you and I out there being like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Trying to run 120 yards with cowboy boots on. Are you kidding me?
Oh, yeah.
No.
Dude.
No, I'll be like, why did my ankles hurt?
And the episode right before it can be you buried in snow with Jake out in Utah. And the
Not doing that
stuff.
either. No. Here's another episode.
Fantastic.
Of Ted doing the things that Eric's not going to do.
Chasing cows.
Well, Josh, I'm glad I had you on, man. I'm sure we'll talk some more. I was just texting with CJ, telling him it was really good. He really wanted you and I, to kind of meet and interact and talk and bounce things off of each other.
Yeah, yeah.
So I told him I'm gonna come watch some stuff. I'm gonna. It's not that you're not that far from us, you know.
Yeah,
dude, watch. You're gonna buy a border collie.
I am not buying a border collie.
You're lying.
No, I am, however, the first week of February getting a Malinois turf puppy, a cross puppy. We're going to keep it at the facility and train up for. So it's all a long story, but it's
every
time
I get a new Malinois puppy, I'm like, why do I buy these things? Like, these things suck.
Well, if anybody's got to get a hold of you, Ted, where is that at?
I'm on all the social medias. Torchlight K9, letter K number 9. It's never spelled out the word. It's always K9. Torchlight Pets. We got a bunch of pets in. We were busy over December, apparently, and we're busy now. Apparently, everybody realizes their dog's an asshole over Christmas break, and now the phones blew up like January 2nd. People are like, they stole the turkey. He bit my mom. He tore up a present.
Dogs yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. So that, and then obviously this is working_dog_radio on Instagram and Facebook. We have a TikTok now that I don't run. It's either Lisa or Alicia runs it. I don't remember who runs it. One of my staff runs it. And then, our guys have been busy. We got a bunch of stuff. My police canine handlers have been busy. I had a guy, we had a murder suspect here in Oklahoma that killed 3 people. And he was on the run, and I had 3 handlers on the ground looking for this guy.
Nice.
And they ended up finding him. They didn't bite him. But, 3 handlers caught this dude. And then one of my handlers from Durant used the dogs in evidence recovery and found the murder weapon, or suspected murder weapon, whatever. The guy's a shitbag. He's covered in tattoos, and he's an asshole.
I saw that picture, yeah.
Yeah, fuck that dude. Dreadlocks. He looks exactly what he's fucking prison tattoos all over his neck and dreadlocks. He's a shithead. They should have bit the ink off that dude 100%. But it was one of these weird deals where he wasn't where they thought he was going to be, and it got funky. Other than that, I'm Torchlight K9, Instagram, Facebook, and then Ted_Summers if you want to look at memes and funny stuff. I post dog stuff there too, but it's and then same thing on Facebook. Where are you?
Well, if you're watching this on YouTube, which we really like you to do, make sure you like and subscribe. We need to start
see the skull over Josh's head.
Yes,
the entire episode you're going to be watching this, and he's going to be like, "Oh, you can cut this out," but that's her. I'm like, "Fuck that! I ain't cutting this out."
Murder hornet bull.
Yeah.
So we got to start doing this at the beginning of the episodes. If you're checking in on YouTube, like, subscribe. Please like and subscribe us on YouTube. We really were trying to get more people going to YouTube, but our TikTok is really shorts from our YouTube. We're going to start putting shorts up on there too. Check me out, Van S K9 on Instagram. Go to Amazon, search my name. It's right there, Eric Stanbro. Search my name. It pops right up. You won't even get to the end. You'll just get Eric STA. My name will come up. Buy my book. You won't be just. It's the best $15 you'll spend.
It's like $15, right? Yeah,
$14.99, and it helps me out. Really do nothing, but I like it. It's been going well. I'm going to do the audio version. Here's something I just learned, dude. So everybody wants me to do the audio version because they think it's going to be me cussing and everything like that.
Exactly.
From what all my research shows, that when you're doing the audiobook, you can't go off script. You can add inflection and emotion, but you got to read the words. They said that some publishers will sue you if you go different. I self-published, but I published to Amazon. So I'm still researching it. But they said you can't, you really got to just read what's on it. You can add your own attitude in it, which I could do that. So.
What the seriously?
Yeah, I know. But go check it out on Amazon. It's also on Kindle. So Josh, really appreciate you taking time out.
Yeah.
To come on with us, and it's great. You're good. You're actually, I tell you what, you're good at this stuff because I can tell you're passionate about it, and I like when we can ask you a question and then sit back for 4 minutes and you just answer the questions. Sir. And when CJ was on, we had him on. He answered like he was testifying in court.
I know. That's every time we have fucking cops on or dudes in the military, and they're like, "Yeah," and you're like, "Yeah, what?"
They
can you talk a little more, bro? Yeah,
and
you're like you can talk. It's cool.
Yeah, you were relaxed. You did a great job. I appreciate it. Everybody, check out our sponsors. We appreciate all the support you guys do. You guys are killing those discount codes. We love it. They love it, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
Thank you, guys.